Okay, let's just dive right into this. Are you constantly feeling exhausted by this endless cycle of headlines, social media anxiety, and that quiet, crushing pressure to just survive another week? Well, you're definitely not alone. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the incredibly relevant ideas of contemporary philosopher Byung-Chul Han. We're specifically looking at his transformative recent work on the spirit of hope. Han argues that modern life is systematically trading our capacity for true human joy for this breathless state of crisis management. But, and this is the best part, he doesn't just diagnose the illness, he offers a truly profound cure. So I want you to sit with a pretty heavy question for a second. Are we truly living, or are we merely surviving? I mean, so many of us are walking around carrying this persistent background anxiety. We feel this unending pressure to optimize our lives, right? To track our sleep, monetize our hobbies, just constantly be productive. But underneath all that optimization, there is this deep, bone-weary exhaustion. Han suggests that, honestly, we aren't actually living full human lives anymore. We're just surviving. Section 1. The Society of Fear. To understand how we got here, we kind of have to zoom out and look at our broader culture. This isn't just a personal failing or some individual burnout. Let's break down the symptoms of this modern malaise. We're constantly bombarded by what's being called the multi-crisis: pandemics, climate catastrophes, economic instability. I mean, the doomsday clock is ticking closer to midnight than ever before. This nonstop stream of apocalyptic headlines creates a really depressive, fearful environment. And what happens when we're afraid? Well, we isolate ourselves. We shrink our world down to just protecting ourselves and managing the next immediate crisis. Life gets reduced from this grand narrative to just a breathless series of problems to be solved. And that brings us to a really crucial point: mere survival. Han actually compares our modern society to a sick patient who is trying by any means necessary to escape an impending death. Think about it. When your entire focus is just avoiding catastrophe, just staying healthy, just keeping your job, just getting through the day, you pathologize daily life. We literally stop being humans, building a meaningful existence, and we devolve into these anxious biological units, desperately trying to avoid the next crisis. Section 2. The Neoliberal Survival Trap. So why are we stuck in this survival mode? Well, it's definitely not an accident. Han points to the systemic forces of neoliberalism and what he calls dataism as the mechanics keeping us trapped. We're caught in what he refers to as the Inferno of the same. Think about the algorithms running our digital lives right now. Big data tracks every click, every purchase, every physical step you take. And the whole goal of this dataism is to predict your behavior. But here's the catch. When the algorithm perfectly predicts and controls your tomorrow based entirely on your yesterday, the future basically ceases to exist as a space of new possibilities. Instead, the future just becomes this optimized, calculated extension of the present. There is zero room for the unknown, no room for genuine surprise. We're just trapped in a perpetual, exhausting present. Section 3. The Optimism Illusion. Naturally, society tries to sell us a cure for all this exhaustion, but the solutions we're offered, they're completely illusory. We often confuse two very different concepts here: optimism and hope. Optimism is, frankly, cheap. It lacks negativity. The optimist basically sits back passively and says, "Oh, everything will be fine," completely ignoring reality of suffering. Han argues that we don't actually need optimism, we need hope. True hope is dialectical. It literally requires the negativity of despair to even exist. Hope isn't a passive wish. It's an active, militant search for the new, and crucially, it brings people together rather than isolating them. And this leads us to Han's razor-sharp critique of positive psychology. We're so culturally obsessed with good vibes only and toxic positivity. But what's really happening under the surface here? When society tells you to just think positive, it effectively privatizes your suffering. If you're anxious, burned out, or struggling, positive psychology basically tells you it's your own fault for not having a better mindset. It totally ignores the systemic issues of the society of fear and just breeds this lonely, narcissistic focus on the self. You're left entirely alone to manage your own happiness in a broken system. Which brings us to a massive turning point in this explainer. If blind optimism is a trap, and if toxic positivity just isolates us even further, what actually saves us from absolute despair? Like, how do we actually break out of that inferno of the same? Section 4. Radical and Militant Hope. To find the answer, Han points to the really profound imagery of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope." Dr. King was not a blind optimist. He looked directly at the horrific, mountainous reality of despair. But true hope is carved out of that very mountain. The negativity, the darkness, the despair, that is the exact soil from which radical hope must grow. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that hope is fundamentally active. It's a state of readiness. Hope actually precedes action. It gives us the imagination to envision something completely new, something totally outside the algorithm's predictions. Without hope, our actions are just blind problem solving, literally just surviving. But with hope, our actions are inspired. Hope is the very catalyst, the ferment for true revolution and change. Section 5. Welcoming the unexpected. Okay, so how does this militant hope practically change the way we live? Well, it changes our relationship with time itself by allowing us to break that algorithmic trap. To explain this, Han draws on the French philosopher Jacques Derrida, who distinguished between two different concepts of the future, futur and avenir. Futur is the tomorrow that we can plan, calculate, and manage. It's the exact future that big data and algorithms optimize for us. It's safe, sure, but it's sterile. Avenir, on the other hand, which comes from the French word for to come, represents the arrival of the totally unknown, the absolutely unplannable event. Embracing this avenir means cultivating an active alertness to the unknown. Dataism hates the avenir because, let's face it, data can't predict a miracle, it can't predict spontaneous human freedom, and it definitely can't predict radical change. By hoping for the avenir, we're actively saying no to the predictive algorithm. We're keeping the door open for genuine surprise, for a new world that is completely different from the one we have right now. Section 6. The healing power of we. Now, we cannot do this alone. To uncover the ultimate antidote to the society of fear, we have to make a vital shift from the isolated individual to a connected community. Han leans on the profound words of Václav Havel, the Czech dissident and statesman. Havel says, hope is an orientation of the spirit. It's not a guarantee that things will turn out well. Again, that's optimism. Hope is the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. This elevates hope to something transcendent. It anchors us in meaning, not just in favorable metrics or positive data points. Furthermore, Han looks to the philosopher Gabriel Marcel, who summarized this so beautifully. I hope in you. True hope actually requires stepping outside of your own ego. Han pairs this with the thoughts of philosopher Simone Weil, who argued that absolute, unmixed attention to another human being is literally a form of prayer and love. In a society that constantly tells you to optimize yourself, build your personal brand, and manage your own anxiety, Marcel and Weil are here to remind us that hope is deeply relational. You cannot truly hope in isolation. Hope requires transcending the self and placing your faith, your attention, and your listening ear into another human being. So here's our key takeaway. The neoliberal society of fear relies on you staying isolated, anxious, and obsessed with your own survival. The ultimate antidote is the shift from the isolated I to the transcendent we. Stepping back into true human freedom means building real community. It means putting down the phone, ignoring the algorithmic feed, and engaging in active, deep listening and love for the other. Fear isolates, hope unites. Which leaves us with this final thought. You've seen how the society of fear operates. You've seen exactly how cheap optimism fails us. So will you continue to merely survive the algorithm, just managing crisis after crisis in the inferno of the same? Or are you ready to cultivate a militant, active hope, to open your door to the community and boldly welcome the unexpected avenir? The choice of how you engage the future is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks a new way of looking at your week ahead.
Are you constantly feeling exhausted by, just an endless cycle of headlines, social media anxiety, and, that quiet pressure to just survive another week?
I mean, who isn't feeling that right now?
Right. It's everywhere. And if you're nodding your head to that right now, you're a victim of what the South Korean-born philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls the society of fear.
Yeah, and it's important to state right up front, this isn't a personal failing on your part.
No, not at all.
It's not like a lack of individual resilience. We're diagnosing the water we're all currently swimming in.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. We're taking a really profound journey into Han's transformative recent works, and specifically we're focusing on his concept of the spirit of hope.
Which is so desperately needed right now.
It really is. We've gathered this rich collection of philosophical analyses, essays, and lectures that just unpack his theories on modern society, digital culture, and, well, human connection.
Yeah, and our mission for this deep dive is to really understand how modern life has systematically traded our capacity for joy and for true freedom for this breathless state of basically crisis management.
Breathless is the perfect word for it.
Yeah.
And we want to discover how Han's really radical, militant definition of strong hope offers us an actual way out.
Right. Because the exhaustion you're feeling, that we're all feeling, it's a symptom of a highly structured societal shift.
Yeah.
I mean, we're operating in an era where the very architecture of our daily lives is engineered to keep us in this constant state of low-level panic.
A hum of panic, like
Yeah.
always in the background.
Exactly. And we need to examine the mechanics of that panic. Because until we understand how our environment weaponizes fear to demand high-level productivity,
Right.
any attempt to find genuine hope is just going to be absorbed right back into the system.
Okay, so if we're going to look at those mechanisms, we really have to start with the baseline reality of this multi-crisis era we're living in.
Yeah, the water we're swimming in, as you said.
Right. And the sources we're analyzing point out that the doomsday clock is currently sitting at, like, 90 seconds to midnight.
Which is terrifying.
It's insane. We are bombarded with apocalyptic scenarios constantly. Global pandemics, escalating climate catastrophes, the threat of nuclear conflict.
It's just a barrage of existential threats.
It is. And Han argues that this humming state of emergency reduces human life to what he calls mere survival.
Near survival, yeah.
He describes a breathless, panting society, like we are acting like sick patients whose only goal is to just avoid an imminent death rather than actually living our lives.
Right, it's a purely defensive posture.
But, I mean, let me play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't a heightened state of alert, a necessary biological response?
Well, sure.
Like, if there is a legitimate threat, shouldn't we be focused on survival?
Okay, so we have to separate acute biological survival from chronic sociological survivalism.
Okay, break that down for me.
So, historically, human fear was tied to a very specific, concrete threat. You feared a predator, an invading army, maybe a winter with a poor harvest.
Something you could point at.
Exactly. And the mechanism of fear, so the release of cortisol, the activation of the amygdala, it was designed to resolve.
Right, the fight or flight ends eventually.
You escaped the predator, or, well, you didn't. The threat passed, and your nervous system returned to a baseline of rest.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. Han's observation is that modern society has shifted into this diffuse, constant dread.
Because the threat never leaves.
It never leaves because the threat is ambient. It's an anxiety about generalized disaster or economic instability and even just personal inadequacy.
Wow. Yeah, it's like a fog.
It is. And when life is stripped of a grander narrative horizon, when we lose shared stories, religious structures, or just higher communal purposes, existence gets reduced entirely to biological optimization.
Biological optimization.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep the machine of our bodies running and the numbers in our bank accounts from flatlining.
So it feels like we're all on a treadmill that's gradually speeding up.
That's a great way to put it.
Like we aren't running toward a destination, We're just sprinting to keep from being thrown off the back.
Exactly. Just trying to maintain the status quo so you don't get hurt.
But wait, when you say biological optimization, are you talking about how the modern economy actually requires us to be anxious so we keep producing?
Yes, absolutely.
Because if everyone is terrified, it seems like society would just collapse into total chaos. Why hasn't it?
It doesn't collapse into chaos because the fear is channeled into a very specific type of labor.
Oh, interesting.
This is the neoliberal mechanics of fear. Fear is an incredibly effective tool of control because it isolates people.
Because you're only worried about yourself.
Right. When you are terrified of losing your job or you're terrified of falling behind in this hyper-competitive gig economy, you do not rebel against the system causing the fear.
You don't have the energy to.
Exactly. You turn inward, you work harder, you exploit yourself.
Wow. You exploit yourself.
The mechanism here is brilliant in its cruelty, really. The system convinces you that the only way to alleviate your anxiety is through extreme self-preservation.
So you become hyper-focused on your own performance.
Yes. And you view everyone else as either a competitor for scarce resources or a threat to your stability.
Which completely breaks down any possibility of collective solidarity.
Exactly. It destroys the fabric of community.
And the sources point out a very specific, observable political consequence of this isolation. Han notes that this pervasive fear and the intense resentments it breeds pushes populations toward right-wing populism.
Yeah, he makes a very direct link there.
It fuels hatred and destroys empathy. Now, I want to pause here and be incredibly clear with you, the listener.
Hmm.
We are neutrally reporting Han's sociological and philosophical observations here.
Right. This is his analysis of the sociological mechanics.
Exactly. We are not endorsing a political side here on the deep dive.
Hmm.
We are simply conveying his argument regarding the mechanics of a frightened society.
It's an important distinction to make.
It is. But I do want to push on that mechanism. Why does fear specifically destroy empathy and lead to that kind of political hostility?
It actually comes down to cognitive bandwidth.
Really? Like brain function?
Yeah. Empathy, dialogue, and democratic participation, they all require the engagement of the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, the high-level thinking part.
Right, the part of the brain responsible for complex, long-term thinking and for understanding the perspectives of others.
Got it.
But when a population is kept in a state of chronic fear, the amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, it just hijacks the system.
It overrides everything else.
Completely. You physically lose the cognitive capacity to entertain nuance.
Oh, wow.
Democracy requires a space free of ambient terror to function properly because it requires the ability to listen to the other, the person who is fundamentally different from you.
And if you're terrified, the other is just a threat.
Exactly. When fear rules, the brain demands rigid simplicity and immediate safety. We close our doors to anything foreign, and society transforms into a prison of conformity and hostility.
That brings up a massive contradiction, though.
How so?
Well, if this constant state of fear and self-exploitation is so psychologically devastating, why do we willingly, even eagerly participate in it?
Oh, the willing participation is the most insidious part.
Right. Like, we don't just endure the tracking, we buy the devices. The text specifically calls out health and auto-tracking apps.
Yes, the gamification of biology.
I mean, I am literally wearing a smartwatch right now that tracks my sleep cycles, my daily steps, my resting heart rate. And, I feel like I'm doing a good thing.
You feel responsible.
Yeah, I feel like I'm taking care of my health. Why does Han view this as part of the pathology?
Okay, so consider the mechanism behind what you are actually doing with that watch.
Okay.
You are turning the lived qualitative experience of your body into a quantifiable mechanical process.
Oof. When you say it like that.
Han argues that this is the ultimate victory of the survivalist mindset. You are no longer experiencing a meaningful human existence. You are managing a biological unit.
Like I'm a machine.
You are optimizing a machine. When you judge the quality of your sleep, not by how rested your mind feels when you wake up, but by a proprietary sleep score.
Generated by some algorithm.
Yes. Your life is stripped of its poetry and reduced to data points.
But why do we love it so much?
Because we participate willingly, since this system disguises this frantic survivalism as self-improvement. It looks like empowerment.
Wow. We mistake the optimization of our biological machine for actual freedom.
Precisely. We completely miss the fact that we are just making ourselves more efficient workers for a system that demands infinite productivity.
Okay, but if we are so exhausted by this constant tracking and this endless pressure to optimize, I feel like our natural instinct is just to retreat.
To withdraw from the world, yeah.
Right. We go home, we close the door, we open our laptops, and we just scroll through our curated digital feeds. We look for comfort.
It feels like an escape.
Exactly. But Han argues that this digital retreat is actually the next layer of the trap. He calls it the Inferno of the same.
The Inferno of the same. It's such a powerful phrase.
What does he mean by that?
Well, the digital realm, which is powered by big data and predictive algorithms, operates by offering us a world completely devoid of friction.
Zero resistance.
Right. The algorithms are designed to maximize engagement, and they do this by presenting you only with what you already like.
The echo chamber.
Yeah, they feed you the opinions you already agree with, the aesthetics you already prefer, the products you are statistically most likely to buy.
So you're never challenged.
You are surrounded entirely by reflections of your own established ego.
But, and let me push back here a bit, isn't Han just being a technological pessimist?
Some people definitely argue that.
I mean, humans have always sought out like-minded tribes. We've always formed echo chambers, whether it was, a 1950s country club or a niche hobbyist magazine.
Sir, human nature hasn't changed.
So how is an algorithmic feed fundamentally any different? Are we just romanticizing a past that didn't actually exist?
It's a fair question, but the difference lies in the scale, the invisibility, and the utter eradication of the other.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Think about that 1950s country club. It had physical temporal boundaries.
You had to go there, and then you had to go home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You eventually had to leave it, go to the grocery store, walk down the street, and interact with the broader, unpredictable world.
You couldn't avoid reality entirely.
Right. But the algorithmic feed has no boundaries. It is a totalizing environment that lives in your pocket and actively rewires your perception of reality itself.
Because it's always with you.
Yes. And Han uses the term the other, with a capital O, to represent the unknown, the foreign, the challenging, the negative.
The stuff that causes friction.
Exactly. It's the person who fundamentally disagrees with you, the art that deeply confuses you, the real-world experience that forces you to adapt.
And the algorithm just filters all of that out.
In the Inferno of the same, the algorithm preemptively removes the other to keep you comfortable and engaged. But without the friction of the other, there is no psychological or spiritual transformation.
Because you never have to grow.
You never grow. You just stagnate in a pool of your own preferences.
Han describes this state as a smart prison, which is a really terrifying concept because it implies we are locked up, but we're holding the keys and just refusing to use them.
It's the perfect description. Totalitarian regimes of the past ruled by physical force and coercion.
They dictated what you could not do.
Right. A smart prison, on the other hand, operates through convenience.
Oh, that's chilling.
You do not feel like a prisoner when you are swiping through a flawlessly customized TikTok feed or letting a streaming service autoplay your next favorite show.
You feel entirely free, like it's all your choice.
Exactly. But your choices are being meticulously predicted, guided, and boxed in by big data. We willingly exploit our own attention, completely mistaking this frictionless consumption for actual liberty.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because if everything is predictable, that has a devastating effect on how we experience time, doesn't it?
It radically alters our relationship with time.
If the algorithm knows what I'm going to buy before I buy it, and knows what article is going to outrage me before I even click it, I'm not really moving forward.
That touches on one of the most profound insights in the source material. Total predictability murders the future.
Murders the future.
Wow. When everything in your life is calculable, you are no longer living into a genuine future. You are living in a perpetual, optimized present.
Because nothing is actually new.
Right. The digital world is highly additive. You can scroll endlessly, adding one piece of micro-content to the next, but it lacks any narrative closure.
It's just more of the same. Forever.
It is a sequence of isolated moments of stimulation that never resolve into a meaningful story.
And that has to be exhausting on a soul level.
It is. This inability to encounter the unknown, to face the friction of a true future, is deeply tied to the modern epidemics of depression and burnout.
So, if algorithms are locking us in this smart prison of a perpetual present and we're burning out from the exhaustion of survival, modern culture is very quick to offer a solution.
Oh, they always have a solution ready to sell you.
Right. And that solution is usually, to be positive, manifest your success, look on the bright side.
Good vibes only.
Good vibes only. But Han aggressively rejects this.
He detests it, really.
He draws a massive hard line between true hope and this cheap optimism. And we really have to dissect this because on the surface, optimism seems like exactly what a frightened society needs.
It seems intuitive, right? But optimism, in Han's precise philosophical definition, is completely devoid of negativity.
What does that mean practically?
It is a blind positivism that assumes everything will simply work out fine on its own. The optimist lives in what Han calls close time.
Close time,
Yeah.
like it's already finished.
Yes, it is a form of fatalism. The optimist is completely unbothered by the harsh realities of the world because they believe the trajectory of the universe is already permanently set toward a positive outcome.
Which leads to a really counterintuitive point in the text. Han argues that the absolute pessimist is structurally identical to the blind optimist.
I love this point. They are mirror images of the exact same passivity.
Because neither of them is actually doing anything.
Exactly. Both the blind optimist and the absolute pessimist believe that the future is already written.
The optimist thinks it's written as a comedy.
And the pessimist thinks it's written as an unavoidable tragedy. But neither of them believes that the future can be radically altered by human action in the present.
They both live in a closed loop of time.
They are both just spectators to their own lives.
Man, that fatalism, that is the engine behind Han's blistering critique of positive psychology.
Yes, the corporatization of happiness.
We see this everywhere. In corporate wellness programs, bestseller self-help books, positive psychology forces individuals to privatize their suffering.
It's incredibly toxic.
It really is. It tells people that if they are unhappy, if they're stressed, if they're burning out, it is entirely their own fault for not cultivating a positive mindset.
Which is such a heavy burden to place on an individual.
But wait, let me push back for a listener who might be thinking, isn't cognitive behavioral therapy, which focuses on reframing negative thoughts, actually incredibly helpful for people? Is Han just throwing out all mental health practices here?
No, no. Han is not attacking clinical therapy for individuals dealing with clinical issues.
Okay, good clarification.
He is attacking the sociological weaponization of positivity.
The weaponization of it.
Right. When an ideology forces you to privatize systemic failures, it becomes a form of gaslighting.
Gaslighting, yes.
If you are deeply depressed because you are working 3 precarious gig economy jobs, you have 0 health care, and you cannot afford rent.
Which is a very real situation for millions of people.
Exactly. And then positive psychology comes along and tells you to just practice mindfulness, keep a gratitude journal, and reframe your stress as an opportunity for growth.
It's insulting.
It completely ignores the toxic systemic economic conditions that are actually causing the suffering. It shifts the entire burden of societal failure onto the shoulders of the isolated individual.
Okay, so it's like putting a smiley face sticker over the flashing check engine light on your car's dashboard. That is exactly what it is. It doesn't fix the cracked engine block. It doesn't address the oil leak. It just makes you feel incredibly guilty for noticing that the car is breaking down in the first place.
And that guilt is the whole point of the system.
To keep you blaming yourself instead of the system.
Right. Han argues that this forced positivity is a literal form of psychological violence.
Violence.
Yes, because it exhausts us. We are never allowed to fail, we are never allowed to rest, and we are never allowed to express genuine sorrow or righteous anger at a broken system.
We are forced to constantly perform happiness and extreme capability.
We are smiling our way into total collapse.
So having stripped away the fake comfort of algorithms, and having thrown out the cheap smiley face stickers of blind optimism and this privatized suffering, we finally arrive at Han's definition of true hope.
The real deal.
And it is not soft, it is not passive. Han describes true hope as a radical, militant passion.
To really understand Han's concept of strong hope, we have to recognize that it is born only from facing the absolute depths of despair.
You can't bypass the pain.
No. Hope is not the avoidance of negativity, it absolutely requires it. Han uses this dialectical image here, the valley and the mountain. You cannot conceptualize the soaring peak of the mountain without acknowledging the deep, dark trench of the valley. Hope is the spark that ignites precisely because the darkness is so profound and unavoidable.
The sources bring in some heavy historical hitters to illustrate this mechanism. They highlight the dissident, playwright, and political leader Václav Havel.
A perfect example of this in action.
Havel said that hope is a state of spirit, an orientation of the heart that transcends the immediate world. It's the absolute certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out.
Havel's context is vital here, too. He was writing as a dissident under a highly oppressive Soviet satellite regime.
Right, things were bleak.
Optimism would have been foolish, the system was entrenched, it was brutal, but hope was necessary.
Because it wasn't a guarantee of success.
Exactly. It was not a statistical prediction that his political movement would win tomorrow. It was an active commitment to doing what is right simply because it is right.
The text also cites Martin Luther King Jr., quoting his famous line from the I Have a Dream speech. He says, "With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope."
Yes.
And if we really look at the language there, MLK wasn't just, hoping racism would magically fade away through the passage of time.
He wasn't sitting around waiting.
No, you don't find the stone of hope resting on a sunny beach.
Yeah.
You have to hew it. You have to take a pickaxe to the mountain of despair.
MLK is the perfect embodiment of Han's militant hope. He was a visionary who dreamed awake.
Dreamed awake.
Yes, he weaponized hope to inspire dangerous, difficult, highly disruptive collective action. He was forcing a confrontation with the system.
There is also this beautiful, really haunting quote from the poet Paul Celan included in the text. He wrote, "While there is still light in the star, nothing is lost."
It's that militant refusal to surrender.
But I want to dig into the philosophical underpinnings here for a second, because the sources contrast Han's philosophy of hope with the philosopher Martin Heidegger.
Ah, yes, Heidegger.
Why is Heidegger the antagonist in this specific framework?
Well, Heidegger is a towering figure in 20th century thought, obviously, and he based much of his existential philosophy on the concept of angst.
Anxiety.
Specifically, anxiety and the fear of death, which he termed being towards death.
Being towards death. Okay, sounds cheerful.
Right. Heidegger believed that facing the absolute certainty of your own death is what forces you to strip away societal illusions and become an authentic individual.
It forces you to get real.
Exactly. But Han points out a massive flaw in this framework.
Which is?
Focusing on death and anxiety ultimately isolates the individual. You face your death entirely alone.
Oh, right. Nobody else can die for you.
Exactly. So Han pushes back by proposing an existential philosophy based not on anxiety, but on hope. He shifts the focus from being towards death to natality.
Natality, like birth.
Yes, the capacity for new beginnings. While anxiety isolates us in our own individual survival, hope inherently connects us to others, because a new beginning requires a collective world to be born into.
And the text actually uses a very biological, visceral metaphor for this. It says hope is like a midwife.
A fantastic metaphor.
Right. Now, if we look at the mechanism of what a midwife actually does, it's not passive at all.
Not even a little bit.
A midwife doesn't magically manifest a baby out of thin air.
Right.
But she doesn't just sit in the corner and wait either.
She's actively engaged in the process.
She tracks the contractions, she applies physical pressure, she manages the breathing, she braces against the pain. Han is saying hope is that exact labor. It requires us to sweat and push intensely against the resistance of the present moment to allow the future to actually arrive.
It is a posture of acute attention.
Yes.
The hopeful person is standing on her tiptoes, staring at the horizon, prepared to assist in the agonizing birth of something entirely new.
But to actively work toward the new, to be that midwife, Han argues we have to radically change our relationship with time itself. We have to change how we conceptualize the future.
Which brings us to a crucial philosophical distinction in this deep dive.
Right. Han borrows a framework from the French philosopher Jacques Derrida, who separated time into two very different types of future.
The future and the avenir.
Let's break down the future first. Spelled F-U-T-U-R.
Right. The future is the calculable, predictable future. It's tomorrow's weather forecast, next month's quarterly earnings report, your 30-year fixed-rate mortgage.
The stuff we can map out on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. It is the absolute domain of predictive algorithms, big data, optimization, and risk management.
Okay, that sounds like a normal definition of the future.
But Derrida and Han argue that the future is not actually the future at all.
Wait, why not?
Because it is just an extended, calculated version of the present.
Oh.
Nothing truly new and nothing revolutionary or paradigm shifting can ever happen in the future because it is entirely bound by the parameters of what we already know.
It's just the present, but later.
Exactly.
Okay, so if the future is just the math of the present carried forward, what is the avenir?
The avenir represents the absolutely unexpected.
The unexpected.
It is the arrival of the unplannable, the genuine surprise. It is the arrival of the true other. It is the event that completely shatters your existing paradigms and forces you to completely reorient your life.
Okay, I have to challenge this, practically speaking.
Go for it.
If the avenir is completely unplannable, how do I live a functional life? Do I just stop saving for retirement? Do we stop building infrastructure because we are just waiting for the unexpected? How do you organize a society on the avenir without abandoning basic logistics?
It's a great question, but Han is not suggesting we abandon logistics or basic planning. He isn't anti-spreadsheet.
Okay.
He is warning us against letting logistics become our dominant religion.
Oh.
Hope, Han argues, lives exclusively in the avenir. You do not need hope for the future. You just need a reliable, predictive model.
Right, you don't hope the sun comes up, you just know the physics of it.
Exactly. Hope is the anticipation of the avenir. It is maintaining the psychological and spiritual belief that something completely outside of our current calculations can arrive.
But we've squeezed that out of modern life.
Completely. The danger of modern society is that we have become so obsessed with the future, with controlling and predicting every single variable through data, that we have eliminated the space for the avenir to land.
We've paved over the landing strip.
We have, and the psychological toll of this is absolutely devastating. Han actually defines depression precisely through this lens.
How so?
He says depression is the pathology of a closed future.
The pathology of a closed future. That hits hard.
When you feel like you know exactly how the rest of your life is going to play out when you foresee an endless, inescapable cycle of working, producing, consuming, and paying bills until you die.
Which so many people feel right now.
That is a closed future. That is the tyranny of the future. It is suffocating to the human spirit.
So breaking free from this dataism means we must intentionally cultivate a readiness for the avenir.
Yes.
We have to leave margins of unpredictability in our lives if we want to re-enchant our existence.
We have to invite the unknown back in.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because if we think about it like this, the future is the algorithm auto-completing your text message before you've even finished typing your thought.
Perfect example.
But the avenir is tossing your phone in a drawer, walking outside without a destination, and striking up a conversation with a complete stranger in the rain.
Exact.
You have no idea where it will lead. It carries a risk of awkwardness, a risk of friction, but it is actually alive.
And that interaction with the stranger leads us to the ultimate realization in Han's work.
Which is?
Welcoming the unexpected, maintaining a posture for the avenir, ultimately means welcoming other people.
The other.
The true antidote to the society of fear, the ultimate escape from the algorithmic smart prison, is genuine community.
Because hope cannot exist in a vacuum of narcissism.
Oh, we cannot.
If you are constantly staring at your own reflection, constantly optimizing your personal brand, and tracking your own biological metrics on your wrist, you cannot have hope.
You're trapped in the eye.
Right. Hope requires a fundamental shift in gravity. We have to transcend the I and move toward the we.
And to articulate this, Han draws heavily on the 20th century Christian existentialist Gabriel Marcel.
Okay, what did Marcel say?
He specifically focuses on Marcel's formulation, I hope in thee.
I hope in thee.
Marcel argued that in a broken world, hope, faith, and love are deeply, inextricably intertwined. You cannot possess one without the others.
They come as a package deal.
Exactly. When you have genuine hope, you are fundamentally trusting in something outside of your own control. You are stepping out of the fortified bunker of your ego, and you are acknowledging that your salvation is tied to the existence of others.
And the sources make a really profound connection here to our current political and social realities.
Yeah.
Han argues that the crisis of modern democracy and the parallel epidemic in our mental health is at its core a crisis of listening.
A crisis of listening.
Because we are trapped in our digital echo chambers, engaging only in what Han calls narcissistic hearing.
We listen only to find validation for our pre-existing beliefs.
Right, we just want to hear our own voice echoed back to us. But true, active listening is a profound political and social act.
It's radical.
It is. Active listening is not just waiting patiently for your turn to speak. It is an active invitation. It invites the other in with all their friction, all their mystery, and all their unpredictability.
When you truly listen, you are making yourself vulnerable.
Yes.
You are allowing the other person's reality to alter your own.
And it is terrifying to drop the shield of our curated digital profiles. We curate every post, every photo, every opinion to avoid looking foolish, to avoid being hurt, to avoid any kind of social friction.
We want a frictionless existence.
But if I truly let the other in, if I engage in active listening, I might get hurt. I might realize I am wrong.
And that fear of being hurt is exactly what keeps us trapped in the society of mere survival.
Wow.
But Han is telling us that the friction we are so desperately avoiding is the exact spark needed to ignite true hope.
The friction is the point.
That vulnerability is the only place where true transformation happens. We have to put down the exhausting tools of endless self-optimization. We have to dare to become vulnerable to the people around us.
So if we pull all of these threads together, the diagnosis and the cure become really clear.
Yeah, they do.
We break free from a breathless life of mere survival only by embracing the shared, militant enterprise of hope. We have to stop trying to immunize ourselves against every possible risk and discomfort through data and algorithms.
We have to accept the messiness of life.
You must accept the pain, the unpredictability, and the friction of the other, because that is where love actually lives, and that is where the true future, the avenir, is born.
It is an active, daily rebellion against a system that wants you isolated, fearful, predictably polarized, and endlessly productive.
True hope does not force toxic positivity. It isn't a passive wish that the universe will just magically sort itself out while you watch from the sidelines. It is a radical state of readiness.
A militant readiness.
It refuses to let algorithms dictate a closed future, choosing instead to boldly embrace the unexpected and the glorious, messy friction of real community. And that brings me to a final, really provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your week.
I love this part.
It builds on something deeply fascinating from the source material regarding the act of staying home, which Han frames as ontological conservation.
It flips the script entirely.
It really does. Next time you feel that heavy, overwhelming urge to cancel your weekend plans, unplug your router, and just sit in the absolute quiet of your home. What if you aren't experiencing a personal failure?
What if it's not a breakdown?
Right. What if you aren't exhibiting social anxiety or antisocial behavior? What if that urge is actually your mind executing a brilliant act of rebellion? A desperate, intelligent attempt to detoxify from the algorithmic inferno of the same and clear the runway for the true, unpredictable avenir to finally land.
Just making space for the unknown.
Exactly. Maybe the most hopeful, militant thing you can do today is absolutely nothing and see what arrives. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to actively embrace the unknown this week.